Yes, well, we're expecting at the daily briefing the Chief Minister, Howard Quayle, and also just making his way into the room now is the Minister for Enterprise, Laurence Skelly. So this is the third of the daily briefings. And with that, we will hand over to the Chief Minister, Howard Quayle.
Well, thank you all for coming. As I've said time and time again, the situation remains fast and fluid, and I remain committed to the government providing daily updates to the media and through you to the people of the Isle of Man. Again, I would like to thank the media for your positive engagement. In the last 24 hours, the situation has continued to change fast. Staff across all areas of the public sector have been working tirelessly to respond and prepare. I would like to publicly thank them all for all they are doing under considerable pressure. I would like to address 3 points today before handing over to the Minister for Enterprise, who I have asked today to update us on the contacts with local companies and our work to support them. Firstly, I would like to talk about protecting ourselves. As you will know, we have now brought in measures to enforce self-isolation for all people arriving on the island. Posters have been put in place at the sea, airport and airports, and people embarked the Ben last night were handed leaflets as they boarded. Staff have been on hand today to hand out leaflets and explain to those arriving what their responsibilities are, and I'm grateful to Civil Defence volunteers for what was a very early start this morning, meeting the first boat in, and my own team, the Cabinet Office, with also Immigration, who were at the airport with me before 7 o'clock this morning, where we were putting up posters and meeting people. I would like to take a moment to clarify what self-isolation is and isn't. I know there has been some messaging that could have been clearer. I hope people will understand that in the first few days of what are significant changes, there will inevitably be wrinkles to iron out. The Minister for Health and I did cover this in Tynwald yesterday, but I would now like to go through it again for the sake of your viewers, listeners and readers. People have asked me what this means. I would say that if you're in one of these categories, please consider where you are going, who you are meeting, and whether you actually need to make a trip. If you're in our most vulnerable group, if you are over 70, if you have underlying health issues, or if you are pregnant, then we are advising you take extra care and think about social distancing. We certainly want you to seriously consider everything you might do. We do not want you to put yourself at risk. If you can, then you should seriously consider self-isolation. We are not making this mandatory at this stage. And I would like to underline something that I know is tough for many people. If you are visiting anyone who may fit this description, please ensure you are doubly careful. We have today made the difficult decision that with effect from 1 minute to midnight tomorrow evening, that's the 19th of March, all residential services directly provided by adult social care will close to non-essential visitors. We don't want to stop these important community links, but we need to ensure our most vulnerable people are protected. If you are symptomatic, self-isolate. This means stay at home for 14 days. I cannot be clearer about that. This does not mean popping out to the shops. It does not mean you can go and see friends. It means stay at home. If you live in a house with other people and have the symptoms, then you should self-isolate too. If you are lucky enough to have a garden, then of course this is okay to walk in it. Now I know this is not easy, but it is the way that we will stop the spread of the infection and protect our island. If your self-isolation is purely precautionary, for example, if you've come back from travel off island and you are not showing symptoms, first of all, thank you for acting responsibly. If you are in this category, then others living in your house do not need to self-isolate as well. But please follow the self-isolation guidelines on our website. I know that for some this poses real challenges, especially those who live with family who maybe don't have the space to ensure the separation that we are advising, but please try as best you can. People have asked me how we are going to ensure that people respect the new arrangements. Yesterday I briefed you that work was underway to put in place the legal powers to do this. Good progress is being made, and I can report that the offence that is being created will attract serious penalties. You will see more information on this shortly. I hope that we will not have to use these new powers. I have faith that the local community will come together. Individual sacrifices are needed for the greater good and to protect our friends and family. Before moving on, I have to remind you all that these arrangements are subject to change, potentially at short notice. We will do our best to keep everyone as informed as possible, as quickly as possible. I hope you have all seen the announcements made by the Minister of Health about changes to enable us to be able to respond to events. All the details are in the Minister's statement yesterday, but it might be useful to summarise. Elective operations are to stop at Nobles Hospital to free up space and provide clinical support for incoming cases of coronavirus. This will enable Nobles Hospital's 2 surgical wards to be dedicated to COVID-19 patients who need hospital care. This will also allow doctors and nurses to attend training in preparation for treating patients with COVID-19. The emergency department at Nobles Hospital is being expanded to provide a separate area to deal with suspected and confirmed COVID-19 cases. Patients will be signposted to the new assessment area where they will be seen by a clinician who will decide whether they can go home, need to self-isolate or require admission. Ramsey Cottage Hospital has now become the receiving centre for all patients with minor injuries. Serious injuries will continue to be dealt with at Nobles Hospital Emergencies Department. Visiting has been severely restricted at Nobles Hospital to prevent the potential spread of coronavirus. Only immediate families who need to visit for critical reasons will be permitted and will require permission from the nurse in charge of the ward before entering. I know the question of testing is important to people. We know there is a desire for more. All I can say at this moment is that we are doing our best to make a step change. We are working hard to bring in a system that is right for the island. I can't say much more than that at the moment, except that we have heard people's concerns and will take action. As I've said in Tynwald, we all have responsibilities. Individuals must exercise the highest level of hygiene, social distancing, and when necessary, self-isolation. I cannot overstate the importance of this. I'm calling on everyone to think about our community. There is a spirit of community on the island that is deep in our DNA. Let's all do what we can to support those around us who need our help most. There is so much going on already, and thank you to everyone who has been pulling together on this. It really has touched my heart. We will do everything we can to provide the essential services we all need. I will continue to ensure that health services have everything they need. We will do everything in our power to support the economy through this challenging time. We will also use the powers at our disposal to protect the most vulnerable. On this, I would like to applaud the announcement last night by the retailers to ensure that irresponsible behaviour by some does not put the most vulnerable at risk. An excellent demonstration of our private sector responding to the best interests of the island. But I would like to state clearly for the record that if necessary, we will bring forward legislation to support our retailers. At this point, I would like to hand over to the Minister for Enterprise, Laurence.
Yes, thank you, Chief Minister. Faster Mai, good afternoon. 2 days ago, the Isle of Man and government made a critical and decisive decision to protect the health and security of our island. And things have moved on very fast since that particular point. Yesterday in Tynwald, we moved legislation that will provide support for our economy. And today, with the Treasury Minister and several members, we have been meeting with industry to understand what that impact is. I would suggest that we should not underestimate what that impact is. This morning, we met with the visitor economy, which includes the hospitality sector. I think there was over 100 people at that meeting, and we heard from each of those different sectors within how this is impacting them. And it's important to recognise there are businesses there that are on the promenade, have already been impacted. There's businesses there that have been impacted through the Flybe situation and now the CV19. So they've been impacted for some time and they are at a critical point. So we heard very loud and clear that businesses have been impacted in that particular sector. This afternoon, we met with the Chamber of Commerce and also the Institute of Directors to get a broader scope and understanding of the wider economy and the impact there. And we heard the same story there too with regards to industry. There is potential layoffs coming. There is businesses at risk, individuals, self-employed people at risk as a result of this. So what we have done yesterday in Tynwald, we've introduced measures which is really a statement of intent. You heard the Treasury Minister talk about the contingency fund of £40 million. We believe that is not sufficient to support the economy going forward because we do not know what the end date is and matters are changing by the hour. So what we are doing now is we have a meeting directly after this between Department for Enterprise and Treasury, and we are going to look at other measures of how we are going to support the economy. And we will continue to make critical and decisive decisions to support the economy and the people of the Isle of Man. Now, I do know, of course, that what I did hear, actually very loud and clear, that business wants to partner with us. And one of those areas of interest, which we did have a meeting yesterday with, is the banking industry. Very clearly, they have a strong interest in this. So increasing liquidity, extending credit is really important too. A number of banks have already made statements in this particular area. What we are trying to do as a government is try and have that coordinated for our business and individuals, I would suggest, as they go through these very, very difficult times. So at this point in time, the Treasury Minister stated we'll come back by Tuesday with regards to new measures, but we hope before then we'll be able to make statements.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Paul, you were first to go.
Many people keep asking about the school situation. You haven't said much there, have you? I've missed it because I kept expecting you to say you're going to follow the UK. It sounds like Boris is going to make some announcement. Scotland and Wales have.
Yes, well, just to clarify, we are not saying we are closing schools. We expect the Education Minister, not Boris, to make an announcement at 5 o'clock. Well, he is making an announcement at 5 o'clock. I expect that to be that they will be closing schools in England. Scotland and Wales have already said that they will be closing schools on Friday, which is effectively 2 weeks before the Easter break. I think Jersey, Guernsey are too. We are keeping ours at this moment in time open. You have to bear in mind that we have no confirmed cases. We have brought in the isolation of all people coming onto the island, which I don't think anyone else has implemented. If we feel the need to change that position on closing of schools, then we will be updating you all. Obviously, every day we are giving updates, but at this moment in time, our schools are staying open.
Are people keeping their children off? Are you aware of cases? Because I'm hearing things.
Well, I am aware of people who have children who have autoimmune illnesses, who have every right to be concerned, and are therefore keeping their children at home. But only those are what I'm aware of. Tim?
Yeah, this, as you can see, unprecedented media cooperation here is bringing us a press conference with the microphone. So rather than, if I can fire off a few questions and then we can pass it on, it'll just save the microphone bouncing around the room. We had a Manx Radio reporter, likes to go and have breakfast before coming up the hill. This morning, two people having breakfast, having come off the boat. They'd been to France, they said to the owners of this establishment, who then said, well, you're in self-isolation then. And they said, right, didn't know, can I wolf this down and I'll go and self-isolate? Not there's going to be problems initially, I know, but that was an example just this morning.
Yeah, well, that's incredibly disappointing. When Civil Defence was there, everyone got a leaflet telling them that they had to go and self-isolate. So if that's if that's true, I've got no doubt to
we had a
doubt,
reporter there, they witnessed
then
it.
that is incredibly disappointing, and this will have to be monitored, and if there's a way of tightening up the situation, then we will have to do that. I don't think, I know coming off the plane, one of the planes that came in this morning, there was, I think, like 100 passengers booked in, and I think about 15 people actually came off. So numbers of people coming over to the Isle of Man are reducing for that reason of the self-isolation, but we know that our young people will be coming home in big numbers in the next week or so, and we need to ensure that the system works well. So disappointing to hear that, Tim, because those visitors were clearly handed a leaflet telling them what to do, and there are posters up telling them what to do. So
but there's no registration or anything of people coming off the planes and boats?
Yeah, that will be happening, Tim. We need to make sure our powers are in place, and once that's done, then
that's the next stage, effectively. As Chief Minister said, it's disappointing that's happened. However, very, very early stages, and I think the role, particularly from the media, is the opportunity to get the message out. I mean, communication is absolutely critical, and which is why we're doing this on a daily basis. So we would hope and encourage that you, as the media, will help us get those messages out there appropriately at the right time.
That's why I've asked that question.
Thank you very
first.
much for asking it.
Yeah, because it was quite
Important
a clear
one.
breach of the self-isolation. Taxi drivers, we've had quite a lot of comment from them. They rely, of course, on trade at the ports, some the Maloo ones solely at the airport. Obviously, their businesses are suffering, but they're also not sure of the rules about picking passengers up at the airport. And do they then have to self-isolate?
No, first of all, they don't need to self-isolate. Obviously, if they have a passenger that's showing symptoms of coronavirus, then they should not take those passengers. We would hope that when those passengers are going through the various ports, that they are taken to one side. We have isolation rooms at the airport and the ports for anyone who is showing signs of potentially having coronavirus. So if they are just waiting to pick up someone who's not presenting any signs of coronavirus, then my advice to them is that obviously the person puts their luggage themselves in the boot if they have any. They don't shake hands or touch if anything they can. The person gets in the car and then they drop them off where they're going, and then if they clean the handles that the person might have used to get in and out, that is the advice, that they can carry on business as usual, and that's the information for the time being. But they do not need to self-isolate.
I'll just ask you for listeners' questions and then I'll pass it on. It's just quick fire if that's all right. People are panic buying. Can we do anything more? Can government bring in legislation to stop that happening? Also, pregnant women we've had.
Right, well, should we do one? If you've got a quick fire, let's do one at a time then, so I can give you
legislation.
Right, so all our shop owners on the Isle of Man have agreed that amongst themselves, they've had a meeting that they will be restricting people to limit them to a set number of items. Now, it's incredibly disappointing that this has happened. I'm really disappointed for our hard-working emergency services staff who are putting in long hours to ensure that we are well protected, who then try and go and get some food for their families, and there's nothing on the shelves. That's incredibly disappointing. Some people are being incredibly selfish, and if it continues, and if I hear of any abuse of storekeepers who are carrying out the restriction of certain items, it's either 2 or 3 depending on the product, then yes, legislation will be put in place to stop this. We are bringing in emergency powers which have not been used since 1939. The only time, the Act goes back to 1936, and that will give us the powers if people continue this. But I sincerely hope that people realise that there is a free flow of produce onto the Isle of Man that we don't produce ourselves, and therefore stocking up is incredibly unnecessary and is damaging the island, it's damaging your neighbour, your vulnerable neighbour, and people who are putting their health on the line to protect you. So please think about this panic buying. It has to stop.
And I'll throw the other 2 in because I'm conscious we've got other people here. Clear advice for pregnant women, especially teachers, would be useful, was one we had in. and the other self-employed. How are we going to help them?
Okay, well, first of all, regarding pregnant women, I think we've been very clear on that. You do not have to self-isolate at this moment in time. We recommend that you do, but that's your decision. But there are certain things that you can do to reduce your exposure, and obviously the 2-metre rule is one of them. But if they want to go onto gov.im/coronavirus, they will get all the latest thinking. That is obviously changing all the time, and if we feel at a certain time that all vulnerable people need to self-isolate, then we will announce that. But at this moment in time, we're asking them to think twice, be sensible, and try and ensure that they don't shake hands with people, for example.
If they're pregnant as a teacher, though?
Well, again, that has to be how they work round their classroom. So they have to think this through. We're not saying you must stay at home. What we're saying is just think it through. They're teachers, they're obviously sensible people, and they can work out how they can handle their duties.
And self-employed, thank you for raising that, Tim. That was heard very loud and clear, not just yesterday. In fact, since we set up our number for inquiries introducing the legislation yesterday, which is 686 455, and the website is gov.im/enterprise for more information. We have been inundated. I can tell you we've had hundreds of inquiries from general business, but we have certainly picked up that self-employed is an area that we are going to address, and that is one of the points that we will be picking up with a new revised scheme that we will be bringing forward.
Okay, right. I'm sorry, I don't know all of your names. We have some new people here today. I'm sure we'll be all seeing more of one another than our family going forward. But the young lady who I presume are from Isle of Man newspapers.
That's right, yes. So in terms of testing, I'm wanting to know, is the NHS staff, are they a bit of a priority at the moment? They're being in contact with patients. What's happening there?
Well, we're following the standard rules on testing at the moment. As I say, we will be announcing a different step forward on testing of people. Obviously, we are carrying out where people comply with the certain rules for being testing. We are doing testing as we speak, but we will be stepping that up in the very short term, and we'll be making an announcement once we have the full plan ready to roll out. Sorry, young man.
Mark O'Connor.
Mark, sorry, Mark.
So we're talking about stepping up action as such. We've seen over the past couple of days the Villa Gaiety postponing and cancelling many performances. Is there any plans on the table to close the Villa Gaiety complex? And also with the Manx Museum and Manx National Heritage, obviously they attract a lot of older people who are, as you say, at the most risk age group. Are there any plans to close any of those sort of sites at the moment?
Well, this is obviously a fast and fluid. Laurence, do you want to? That's
Yes.
Laurence is responsible for one of those areas.
Indeed, yes. Well, I absolutely understand the Villa Gaiety cancelled a lot of events, probably because there were people actually coming to the Isle of Man and there's self-isolation. So there's not just that, there's events across the island being cancelled. We don't have any official restrictions with regards to events at this particular stage, but it is very fast, it is fluid, and we will be very mindful on that. But Manx National Heritage, who were actually at the meeting this morning, highlighted the challenge from a staffing point of view, because they take on a lot of seasonal staff, and a lot of those are retirees over 70s. So they know that there is a potential impact with that. So they're doing a risk assessment as we speak, and we would expect some form of an announcement from them in the next few days.
Can I say, just for the record, that our pubs and restaurants are open. We're not saying to people not to go there because we have introduced the self-isolation, which is not in any of our neighbouring jurisdictions, a policy. We feel that at this moment in time, get out, have a nice meal, just be sensible, take precautions, make sure you wash your hands, keep your social distance, don't shake hands, do the elbow or the foot shake, as some people are saying. But these are businesses that are affected. There's been no cases on the Isle of Man still today, no confirmed cases. So I think at this moment in time, support your local economy who desperately need it. Paul,
yeah, that touches on what I want to say about the UK has made it very clear that they need money in the economy. Staycations, we want to call this thing. People who had to cancel holidays across to spend money here. You make any provisions to have promotions on that, or help people out?
Okay,
No,
Laurence, do you want to take
really
that?
good point, Paul, because that came out actually quite clear again in this morning's meeting. And what I did hear very loud and clear is until literally a few weeks ago, the tourism industry was buoyant. We're very confident, and the future bookings were looking strong. Clearly, that has changed. So we know we have a good offer here. That has been building over a number of years where we've seen sustainable growth and we've seen investment, significant investment in the industry. So what will happen beyond this will be how we position ourselves from a tourism industry. So we may have more staycations, absolutely. I know there are several people even thinking about myself. We might even consider actually staying somewhere on island, to experience something different. So there is an opportunity with that, but we are looking at where we position ourselves beyond it, because right now this might seem like a crisis and it feels like a crisis, but we must plan for the future, because when we come out of this, we're going to need a new campaign, a new marketing strategy as to how we can build our businesses back up, and tourism is obviously a very key component to our economy.
Yeah. If I can just add before I hand over to Chris, that experts are saying this is not going to go away quickly. So we are going to have these procedures in place for quite a while going forward, and I think therefore we still need to live and where possible get out and enjoy ourselves. And at this moment in time we are not advising that people avoid going to pubs, clubs, restaurants. Enjoy, but be sensible is all we're asking, because this isn't going to go away in a couple of months' time. Some of the latest thinking is it could be up to a year before we get and we can lift restrictions. I don't know how long that's going to be, but support our local businesses. Just be sensible about who you talk to, how you have contact with them. Chris, and then we'll go back to Mark.
Just a quick question, picking up on the testing situation. We're getting daily figures for the number of tests that have been carried out, and the so far 0 returns. How many people, do we know how many people are still awaiting tests? We're getting lots of questions, people saying that they're still trying to get tested and are being turned away. Do we have any figures on how many people are waiting to be tested?
There are, in the number of hundreds, I should imagine at least a couple of hundred people who will be getting contacted. They're all being prioritised. I know more people have been contacted today to say that you are going to be tested. So we're putting in a system which we will be announcing as soon as possible the way forward. But at this moment in time, more people are being tested. I know a number who have been tested today. Mark.
So obviously you're speaking to the scientific advisors and the people in the know, and I think I'm right in saying with the Isle of Man, with any country with a population above 10,000 that actually hasn't had a confirmed case yet. Is there any explanation for why that is, why every other place in Europe seems to have a case of coronavirus, yet the Isle of Man seems to be, I think with the exception of the Outer Hebrides and Scotland, almost like a safe haven, while we don't have coronavirus here yet?
Well, I think you've answered part of the question with your comments, in that small island, Hebrides, we're a small island population of 85,000. We have water around us, and maybe that's why the UK has a smaller outbreak at this moment in time. You could say it's behind the curve of Spain and Italy, as an example. But it's inevitable that at some stage we will get it. We're incredibly grateful that we haven't got it at this moment in time, because this has allowed us to put in place all the transfers of patients, the extra work going to Ramsey District Cottage Hospital so that our hospital will be ready. This has given us the breathing space to get everything ready. So I think because we're a small island, if we were sharing a land border with someone, then I'm confident we would have long ago have had it. But everything is at a different pace. As I say, Italy exploded, then Spain. We've seen the United Kingdom increase significantly by a few hundred yet again today. So at some stage, it will get to the Isle of Man, but we are currently enjoying the time to put the procedures in place so that we are as well prepared as can be possible.
So, as we've heard, there's been quite a few cancellations in terms of events, but as a community, we're quite sporty and we love getting out, but a lot of leagues have taken it into their own consideration to cancel their own sort of playtimes and events. And I'm just wondering about the National Sports Centre, what's going to be happening with that exactly?
Right, I don't have any knowledge about that. I know an awful lot of our sporting events have been cancelled because their parent body has said they're going to cancel, and therefore on the island they've followed suit. We have not said football matches cannot take place. The level, whilst the quality of our sport is exceptionally good, we don't tend to get the big numbers attending these matches as spectators, so we've not said no to the sport going ahead, but some of the organisations have taken the decision to stop because their governing body has said you must stop. So it really is on a case-by-case basis. And as I say, it's fluid, and I apologise that I keep on saying this, but it really is. I come to give interviews to you, and 5 minutes before something will change, and I've got to make get the latest thinking before I can then update my speech to give you the information. For example, you know, the Minister for Health is giving, not health, education is giving a talk as we speak, or shortly giving information on what we believe will be school closures for all of England on Friday. But that's just us guessing, and these things are fluid, and we will give you, tomorrow we may have a different story for you.
And just to clarify, these COVID-19 media briefings are taking place every day, including weekends, is that right?
That's correct. The Saturday and Sunday may not be here. We're trying to work out what the situation will be. But actually, I'm being told it will be here, so there you go. All I know is that for good behaviour, I'm getting Saturday and Sunday off, and we have different ministers coming to give you updates. And we've moved it to here, so it's easy to get to, and we need the room where we have been before for our own resources.
The Minister of Health not here today. Is he well? And aside that, seriously, I want to know about up at the hospital, getting through people who talk to me, that there's a lot of illness with the management there. There's a lot of nurses. I think there's an awful lot of pregnant nurses up there who are having a double issue about should they be working or should they be keeping at home. I don't know if you can really answer that, because I think the Minister of Health has to deal with that one, but he is all right, is he?
David is absolutely fine. Right. It's just I thought you'd be sick of the sight of him. He will be, when we have major announcements to make from the Health Service, he will be coming along. He's been here for quite a number of days now giving comments to you all. I thought because of the business concerns and the problems that the business community are experiencing, it was really important that we brought Minister Skelly along. So yes, I can confirm I've spoken to David. He is perfectly well. I'm sure he misses you all and will soon be back. I expect to have him and the Treasury Minister and Minister Skelly and myself here tomorrow.
We have a doctor.
We will be bringing different medics along to different briefings as we go forward.
So, Chief Minister,
So, Chris.
so we're getting lots of calls at Manx Radio, lots of people asking the same question. How would you answer people who say that the reason the number of positive tests on the Isle of Man is where it is because the number of tests is so low?
Well, we have followed the criteria that the UK and everyone else follows to test the people. You can't do mass testing because you just gridlock the testing system. The likes of our good friends and colleagues in Jersey and Guernsey have a very small number of only 2 or 3 people who've tested positive because they have had a significantly higher number of people coming back from regions that have been infected, and that's why they have a higher number of tests because those people have complied with the rules to do the testing. So we are doing the same, following the same rules and regulations on when you carry out a test and when you don't. It's just that people from the Isle of Man, whether that's by luck or by accident, I don't know, have not been to the regions that maybe some of our fellow Crown dependencies have experienced. But I'm not saying it's not going to come here. We are preparing that it will come to the Isle of Man. We're just using this time where we have no confirmed cases to get all our procedures in place. If you could give your name.
That's fine. It's Jess from
Jess.
Asma Newspapers.
Okay, Jess.
I'm also wanting to know about the locums who are coming back from the UK. Are they going straight into self-isolation? What is happening there?
Right, well, obviously, we've said that certain professions, certain people will be key workers. The Department of Health and Social Care will be working up a strategy on how to deal with people coming back who are key workers. I haven't got that information. That's something that I'll happily have for you tomorrow. Okay, well, if that's all the questions, thank you all very much for coming along. A pleasure as ever. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow, where we will have the Treasury Minister, the Health Minister, who is perfectly healthy, I hope anyway, and Minister Skelly, to see you all again. Thank you very much.
And with that, we'll hand back to the news with Lewis Foster.